My name is Clara, and I am 30 years old. The day a late night phone call completely shattered my entire reality. I was working my second job at a local diner. Wiping dirty tables like cleaning spilled coffee was the most complicated thing I would face that week. The restaurant manager tapped my right shoulder. The central hospital just called on the main line. He looked incredibly pale. Your husband was in a very serious car accident on the highway. I looked directly at him. My husband is supposed to be at a late business meeting. The face of the manager shifted into deep pity. They said you need to get to the emergency room right now. I turned around and dropped my dirty apron directly onto the tiled floor. My husband and I had been legally married for 7 long years. I worked 2 entirely different jobs just to pay all our monthly bills and support his endless business ventures. I cleaned dirty residential houses in the early morning and served greasy food at this loud diner late at night. I gave him every single dollar I earned because I completely trusted his grand vision. I thought we were sacrificing our current comfort to build a beautiful, wealthy future together. I had absolutely no idea he was actively using my hard-earned money to fund a completely secret second life. Welcome back to Drama Storytime, where ordinary women face the cruel people who severely underestimated them, and answer with quiet patience instead of loud noise. The foolish folks who count on you being completely blind rarely check whether your silence actually means you are weak. Please settle in and drop a quick comment, and be sure to subscribe to the channel. The fast taxi ride to the central hospital felt like a terrible nightmare. The bright fluorescent lights of the emergency room completely blinded my tired eyes. The waiting area was completely packed with highly anxious people and crying children. I walked up to the glass front desk and spoke my legal name to the tired receptionist. She typed very slowly on her loud computer keyboard and directed me to a private recovery room on the 3rd floor. I rode the slow elevator up and rushed down the bright white hallway. The terrible smell of strong antiseptic alcohol made my empty stomach turn. I prayed softly to any higher power that my husband was still breathing. I stopped completely dead in my tracks when I reached the open door of his assigned hospital room. The injured man was lying in the elevated hospital bed, with a thick white bandage wrapped entirely around his head. But he was absolutely not alone in the quiet, sterile room. A very young and highly attractive woman was sitting in a plastic chair right next to his bed. She was holding his hand and crying softly into a pink paper tissue. She wore highly expensive designer clothing, and a massive diamond ring sparkled brightly on her left hand. I recognized the beautiful ring immediately because I saw the exact same jewelry store receipt in his coat pocket 3 months ago. The lying man told me he was buying a cheap gift for his elderly mother. I walked slowly into the cold room and cleared my dry throat. The young woman looked up at me with deep confusion in her red eyes. I asked her exactly who she was and why she was holding the hand of my legally married husband. She looked at me like I was a completely crazy person wandering in from the dark street. She stated very clearly that she was his loyal fiancée, and they were officially planning to get married early next month. The small, sterile room suddenly started spinning violently around my tired head. The massive diamond ring I unknowingly paid for was currently resting on the hand of his secret lover. The injured man on the bed suddenly opened his dark eyes. He looked at the young woman and then he looked directly at my tired face. Total, absolute panic washed over his pale skin. He tried to speak, but only a weak, hollow cough escaped his dry lips. The young woman stood up and loudly demanded to know my true identity. I stood incredibly tall and told her I was the legal wife who completely funded her expensive lifestyle. The shocking, ultimate truth hung heavy in the cold hospital air, and my peaceful, quiet life was officially destroyed forever. The young woman stared at me with pure horror written across her perfectly made-up face. She looked back and forth between my tired eyes and the pale face of the injured man on the hospital bed. She begged him to tell her that I was completely lying. She wanted him to say I was just a crazy stranger trying to ruin their perfect engagement. But the guilty man simply closed his eyes and turned his head toward the blank wall. The heavy silence in the sterile room confirmed every single word I had just spoken. The beautiful young woman let out a loud sob and ripped the massive diamond ring off her left hand. She threw the expensive jewelry directly at his face and ran out of the hospital room without looking back. I stood completely still in the middle of the quiet room. The injured man slowly opened his dark eyes and looked at me with a pathetic expression. He tried to use his weak voice to apologize for his terrible actions. He told me he never meant to hurt me and that he was under a massive amount of stress from his failing software company. He claimed the young woman was just a terrible mistake he made during a lonely business trip. I listened to his pathetic lies and felt absolutely zero sympathy for his physical pain. I realized he was still trying to manipulate my tired mind, even while lying in a hospital bed with a broken body. I looked down at the expensive diamond ring resting on the cold hospital floor. I bent down and picked up the heavy jewelry and placed it safely inside my deep coat pocket. I had worked hundreds of early morning cleaning shifts to pay for this specific diamond, and I was absolutely keeping it. I turned around and walked out of the hospital room without saying another word to the lying monster. I rode the slow elevator down to the main lobby and walked out into the freezing winter night. I did not take a yellow taxi back to our shared apartment. I decided to walk the entire 3 miles just to let the freezing air clear my racing mind. I thought about the last 7 years of my entire life. I had worn cheap thrift store clothing and ate terrible canned soup so he could wear tailored suits and eat at fancy restaurants with his fake clients. I realized I was entirely funding his luxurious bachelor lifestyle while I aged prematurely from severe physical exhaustion. The cold sun was just starting to rise when I finally reached our dark apartment building. I walked up the 3 flights of stairs and unlocked the front door. I went straight to his small home office and turned on his expensive desktop computer. I knew all of his passwords because he forced me to manage all the tedious household bills. I logged into our shared bank accounts, and my heart completely dropped into my empty stomach. The primary savings account was entirely empty. He had secretly drained exactly $45,000 over the last 6 months. He transferred every single penny into a hidden private account I could not access. He stole the money I saved for our future house and used it to impress his beautiful young fiancée. I sat in his comfortable office chair and stared at the glowing computer screen. The massive financial betrayal hurt infinitely worse than the romantic affair. He did not just break his sacred marriage vows, he intentionally destroyed my entire financial future while watching me scrub dirty toilets every single morning. A hot wave of pure, burning anger completely replaced the deep sadness in my tired chest. I opened a new folder on the computer desktop and started downloading every single financial document I could find. I printed his credit card statements showing massive charges for expensive luxury hotels and fine jewelry. I gathered the ultimate proof of his massive fraud and placed the thick stack of papers inside my worn backpack. I knew the injured man would be stuck in the hospital bed for at least 2 weeks. I had exactly 14 days to completely dismantle his entire life before he ever returned to this apartment. I took a quick shower and put on my clean diner uniform. I was completely exhausted, but my mind was incredibly sharp. I walked out of the dark apartment and locked the heavy door behind me. The terrible cheating husband severely underestimated the quiet strength of the tired woman who funded his entire existence. The massive war was officially starting, and I planned to win every single battle. I walked into the loud diner for my early morning shift feeling completely numb. My mind was completely focused on the massive financial war ahead of me. I served greasy eggs and hot black coffee to the busy morning crowd. The friendly restaurant manager asked why I looked so incredibly tired. I told him a simple lie about catching a bad winter cold. I finished my long, exhausting shift exactly at noon. I took off my dirty apron and walked directly to the central bus station. I rode the crowded public bus across the massive city to the central bank downtown. The heavy glass doors of the bank opened slowly. I walked inside the quiet building and asked to speak with a senior financial advisor. I sat down at a large wooden desk across from an older man in a gray suit. I handed him my legal identification and asked him to completely secure my personal checking account. I told the older man that my husband was currently hospitalized and I needed to freeze all our joint credit cards immediately. The bank manager typed quickly on his black keyboard and successfully blocked the lying man from creating any new massive financial debts. I opened a brand new private banking account entirely in my own name. I took the small amount of cash I had left in my dirty wallet and deposited it safely. The very first crucial step of my grand revenge was officially complete. My next vital stop was a dusty pawn shop located exactly 3 streets away from the massive central bank. The heavy diamond ring felt like a burning hot stone inside my dark coat pocket. I walked into the dark store and placed the expensive jewelry directly onto the scratched glass counter. The old pawnbroker put a small magnifying glass over his right eye and carefully inspected the sparkling stone. He looked highly surprised by the extreme clarity of the expensive diamond. He offered me exactly $12,000 in crisp paper cash. I knew the lying man paid at least $30,000 for the beautiful ring, but I simply wanted the quick liquid money. I nodded my tired head and watched the old man count the thick stack of bills. I placed the massive amount of cash deep inside my worn backpack and walked back out into the cold afternoon air. I used a small portion of the new money to hire the most ruthless divorce lawyer in the entire city. Her massive office was located on the 20th floor of a tall glass building. The sharp lawyer wore a flawless dark suit and listened quietly to my terrible story. I handed her the thick stack of printed financial documents showing his massive bank fraud. She looked at the credit card statements and smiled a highly dangerous smile. She promised to completely destroy his fake corporate empire and retrieve every single stolen dollar. She drafted a formal eviction notice to legally remove him from the leased apartment. She told me to go back to our shared home and pack every single valuable item he owned before he ever left the hospital. I rode the public bus back to the dark apartment building just as the winter sun was slowly setting. The empty rooms felt incredibly cold and deeply hollow, but I absolutely refused to cry. I found 10 massive black garbage bags under the kitchen sink. I walked directly into his large closet and started pulling down his expensive tailored suits. I folded the luxury clothing and shoved them roughly into the black plastic bags. I grabbed his expensive designer shoes and his rare vintage watches. I packed his expensive golf clubs and his high-end electronic devices. He bought all these luxury items using the exact same money I earned by scrubbing dirty residential floors. I planned to sell every single piece of his fake wealthy life to the highest bidder on the internet. I dragged the heavy black bags into the center of the small living room. I spent the entire night taking detailed photographs of his expensive possessions. I listed every single luxury item on a popular online auction website. I priced everything incredibly low to ensure a very fast sale. The injured man was currently resting in a warm hospital bed, completely unaware that his entire world was being dismantled, piece by precious piece. My deep sadness was completely gone, and only pure absolute determination remained in my tired soul. I went to sleep on the worn sofa, feeling a brand new sense of total control over my own destiny. The very next morning, I woke up early and checked the bright screen of my laptop computer. The online auction website was completely flooded with new messages and high bids. People from all over the massive city wanted to buy his expensive, tailored suits and rare vintage watches. I spent the entire Thursday morning replying to eager buyers and confirming their electronic payments. The total amount of money slowly building in my new private account was absolutely staggering. I realized the lying man had spent tens of thousands of dollars on his fake wealthy wardrobe. By late afternoon, my small apartment living room was completely empty of all his luxury items. Our young college student came by to purchase his heavy golf clubs, and a local businessman bought his entire collection of silk ties. I smiled a very genuine smile as I watched his fake corporate life completely disappear out the front door. My cellular telephone rang loudly while I was wiping down the empty closet shelves. The sharp divorce lawyer from the tall glass building was on the other end of the line. She told me her private investigator successfully located the hidden bank account. The lying man had used a fake corporate name to hide the exactly $45,000 he stole from our joint savings. The ruthless lawyer stated she had already filed a massive emergency motion with a strict family court judge. The angry judge immediately froze the hidden account and transferred the total legal control directly back to me. The sharp lawyer also confirmed the formal eviction notice was officially signed and stamped by the local authorities. She instructed me to change the heavy brass locks on the apartment door before he ever returned from the central hospital. I thanked the brilliant legal professional and felt a massive weight lift directly off my tired shoulders. Later that same evening, the central hospital called my number again. A soft-spoken nurse informed me that the injured man was slowly recovering from his severe car accident. She said he was constantly asking for his legal wife and begging for a brief visit. I kept my voice completely flat and told the quiet nurse I was entirely unavailable. I instructed the medical staff to call his beautiful young fiancée instead. The soft-spoken nurse sounded incredibly confused, but I simply ended the call without another single word. I had absolutely no desire to look at his pathetic face ever again. He chose to build a completely fake life with a massive web of terrible lies, and now he had to face the cold consequences entirely alone. The long weekend arrived, and I spent every single waking hour packing my own personal belongings. I did not own many expensive things, but everything I possessed was bought with my own honest hard work. I carefully packed my simple clothing and my favorite books into sturdy cardboard boxes. I hired a local locksmith to change the heavy brass lock on the front door, just as the smart lawyer advised. I gave the shiny new keys directly to the building manager and explained the complex legal situation. I told the old building manager that the injured man was officially evicted and absolutely not allowed inside the building. The kind older man nodded his gray head and promised to keep the lying cheater far away from the property. I stood in the center of the completely bare living room and took a very deep breath. The apartment looked exactly like it did the very first day we moved in 7 long years ago. All the terrible memories and the heavy financial burdens were completely stripped away. I picked up my heavy cardboard boxes and walked out the heavy wooden door for the very last time. I was finally moving toward a brand new, independent life, filled with total peace and absolute honesty. Exactly 14 days after the terrible car accident, the lying man was officially discharged from the central hospital. He stood alone on the cold city sidewalk, wearing cheap gray sweatpants provided by the medical staff. His highly expensive tailored suits and his rare vintage watches were completely gone. He reached into his thin plastic hospital bag and pulled out his cellular telephone. He immediately dialed the familiar number of his beautiful young fiancée. He desperately expected her to drive a luxury vehicle to the hospital and take him to a warm, safe home. The automated voice operator clearly stated that the specific telephone number was permanently disconnected. The beautiful young woman had completely vanished from his entire life the exact moment she discovered his massive financial lies. He then tried calling my private cellular number. He desperately needed a warm place to sleep and hot food to eat, but I had completely blocked his number several days ago. He was standing entirely alone in the freezing winter wind, with a broken physical body and a completely ruined fake life. He flagged down a passing yellow taxi and directed the tired driver to our old shared apartment building. The long ride across the massive city cost him the very last $20 he had hidden inside his thin leather wallet. He walked incredibly slowly up the 3 flights of stairs, dragging his severely injured leg. He pulled out his shiny metal key and tried to unlock the heavy wooden door. The metal key completely failed to turn the brand new heavy brass lock. He aggressively rattled the metal doorknob and knocked loudly on the thick wood. The old building manager heard the loud noise and slowly walked up the carpeted stairs. The kind older man looked at the injured cheater with absolute, pure disgust. The building manager handed the lying man a thick manila envelope. He clearly explained that the specific apartment was legally vacated, and the locks were completely changed by the primary tenant. He told the injured man he was officially evicted from the residential building and absolutely not allowed to remain on the private property. The terrible cheating husband ripped open the heavy envelope right there in the dark, dusty hallway. Inside, he found the formal divorce papers and the strict legal documents freezing his hidden bank account. The sharp divorce lawyer had perfectly executed every single step of my total revenge plan. The lying man pulled out his cellular telephone and quickly opened his private banking application. He stared in absolute pure horror at the glowing digital screen. The hidden account, containing exactly $45,000, was completely empty. The legal family court had successfully transferred every single stolen penny back into my absolute control. The lying man suddenly realized his entire fake corporate empire was completely destroyed. He had absolutely no expensive clothing and absolutely no luxury items and absolutely zero money. His beautiful fake fiancée was completely gone, and his loyal, hardworking wife was legally completely separated from him. He slowly slid down the painted wall and sat on the cold hallway floor in total, absolute defeat. The old building manager firmly instructed him to leave the private property immediately before he called the local city police. The injured man slowly stood up and limped back down the stairs, with absolutely nowhere left to go. While the lying man was facing his cold, brutal reality, I was happily drinking warm green tea in my brand new small apartment. I rented a tiny, beautiful space on the quiet side of the massive city. I used the money from selling his expensive golf clubs to buy a comfortable bed and a small wooden dining table. The tiny apartment was incredibly peaceful and completely safe from his toxic financial manipulation. I did not have to scrub dirty residential floors in the early morning ever again. The massive return savings allowed me to finally quit my exhausting first job. I kept my evening shift at the loud diner simply because I genuinely liked the friendly restaurant manager and the regular local customers. I was slowly rebuilding my quiet life entirely on my own honest terms. The sharp divorce lawyer called me later that exact same afternoon. She happily reported that the lying man was officially served with all the heavy legal documents outside the old apartment building. She stated that he had absolutely no financial resources left to hire an expensive defense attorney. The massive legal war was practically over before he even had a single chance to fight back. I thank the brilliant legal professional for her incredible hard work and dedication. I hung up the telephone and looked out my clean glass window at the bright setting sun. The foolish man completely underestimated my quiet patience, and he paid the ultimate heavy price for his terrible deception. The cold winter slowly transitioned into a beautiful, warm spring across the massive city. My brand new life in the tiny apartment was absolutely wonderful. I woke up every single morning feeling incredibly light and completely free. The heavy burden of supporting a lying cheater was entirely gone from my tired shoulders. I used a small portion of my return savings to enroll in a local community college. I always wanted to study advanced graphic design, but the lying man previously told me it was a total waste of time and money. I finally possessed the financial freedom and the mental energy to strictly pursue my own personal dreams. I attended my morning classes and worked my familiar evening shifts at the loud local diner. The friendly restaurant manager noticed my bright new energy and gave me a massive promotion to head shift supervisor. I was slowly building a solid professional career and a happy, independent life entirely on my own terms. The final divorce hearing was officially scheduled for a bright Tuesday morning in late April. I wore a simple dark blue dress and walked into the massive stone courthouse, feeling completely calm and highly prepared. The sharp divorce lawyer met me in the grand lobby carrying a thick leather briefcase filled with our solid evidence. We walked together into the quiet wooden courtroom and sat at the long plaintiff table. The heavy wooden doors opened exactly 5 minutes later, and the lying man slowly walked inside. I had absolutely not seen his face since that terrible night at the Central Hospital many months ago. He looked completely unrecognizable and deeply aged. His expensive tailored suits were permanently replaced by cheap, wrinkled clothing. His highly arrogant posture was completely gone, and he walked with a highly noticeable physical limp. He sat entirely alone at the bare defendant table because he possessed absolutely zero money to hire a proper legal representative. The strict family court judge entered the quiet room and sat directly behind the tall wooden bench. The formal legal proceedings were incredibly fast and completely decisive. The sharp lawyer presented the massive stack of financial documents proving his extreme bank fraud and his hidden theft. The strict judge looked at the lying man with absolute pure disgust. The lying man tried to speak and offer pathetic verbal excuses for his terrible actions. He claimed he was suffering from severe mental stress and begged the strict judge for basic financial mercy. The strict judge immediately slammed his heavy wooden gavel and demanded total, absolute silence in the quiet courtroom. The older judge firmly stated that secretly stealing $45,000 from a hardworking, loyal spouse was a deeply calculated legal crime. The final legal ruling was a massive, absolute victory for my brand new, independent life. The strict judge officially granted the formal divorce and permanently awarded me every single penny of the recovered joint savings. The court also officially ordered the lying man to pay my expensive legal fees using his future wages. The lying man sat in his heavy wooden chair looking completely devastated and entirely broken. I stood up from my comfortable chair and walked out of the quiet courtroom without ever looking back at his pathetic face. The sharp lawyer shook my right hand and sincerely congratulated me on a highly successful legal battle. The bright morning sun felt incredibly warm on my clean skin. I walked toward the local bus station feeling like a completely brand new, powerful woman. The foolish man severely underestimated the quiet, endless patience and the massive hidden strength of the tired woman who washed his dirty clothes for 7 long years. I survived the cold, dark betrayal and successfully built a beautiful, independent sanctuary for myself. Absolutely no amount of fake corporate wealth could ever compare to the pure, absolute peace I currently felt in my healing heart. Thank you so much for listening to Drama Storytime. Please remember to always fiercely protect your own financial independence. I will see you in the very next story. Exactly 3 years passed since the strict judge slammed his heavy wooden gavel in the quiet courtroom. I was exactly 33 years old, and my daily life was completely unrecognizable. I successfully graduated from the local community college with top academic honors. I used my deep passion for graphic design to open my very own digital marketing agency. My small business grew incredibly fast because I worked harder than anyone else in the massive city. I hired 5 talented employees and moved into a beautiful modern office building downtown. I completely forgot about the lying man who stole 7 long years of my youth. My private bank accounts were entirely full, and my tired heart was completely healed. I bought a beautiful small house with a bright green garden and adopted a highly energetic golden retriever. Absolute pure peace was my brand new daily reality. The warm summer breeze was blowing softly through my open office window on a quiet Friday afternoon. My dedicated assistant walked into my large private office holding a white paper cup of hot green tea. She told me a highly nervous woman was waiting in the front lobby without a formal appointment. I was completely caught up with my daily design tasks, so I simply told my assistant to send the unknown visitor inside. The heavy glass door opened slowly, and a very thin woman walked into my bright office. I stared at her pale face for exactly 10 seconds before my brain finally recognized her tired features. It was the beautiful young fiancée from the cold hospital room exactly 3 years ago. She looked entirely different from the highly arrogant woman wearing expensive designer clothing and a massive diamond ring. Her dark hair was completely messy, and she wore a cheap, faded sweater. She stood in front of my large wooden desk, looking absolutely terrified. I did not feel any rising anger or deep sadness in my chest. I simply felt cold, pure curiosity. I asked her why she was standing inside my private business office. She sat down in the soft guest chair and immediately started crying heavy tears. She told me she desperately needed my professional help to escape a massive financial trap. She slowly explained that she did not actually leave the lying man completely behind after the terrible hospital incident. She foolishly believed his pathetic verbal lies and allowed him to move directly into her luxury city apartment when the medical staff discharged him. The foolish young woman confessed that the lying man convinced her to take out massive bank loans to fund a brand new software company. He used his incredible manipulation skills to completely drain her personal savings in less than 2 short years. He essentially repeated the exact same terrible financial abuse he originally inflicted upon me. She stated that he completely ruined her perfect credit score and left her with exactly $80,000 in severe legal debt. He then vanished entirely from her life when the angry debt collectors started calling her cellular telephone every single morning. She tracked down my highly successful digital marketing agency, hoping I could teach her how to legally fight back against the terrible monster. I leaned back in my comfortable leather chair and looked at the desperate young woman. She was holding the exact same pink paper tissues she used in the cold, sterile hospital room 3 years ago. I clearly remembered how she loudly demanded to know my true identity while wearing the expensive diamond ring I completely paid for. She actively participated in destroying my legal marriage and happily enjoyed the luxury items bought with my hard-earned cleaning money. I felt absolutely zero sympathy for her current financial tragedy. The young woman knowingly invited a toxic snake into her warm bed, and now she was crying because the cold snake finally bit her. I kept my voice perfectly flat and highly professional. I told the crying woman that I was a digital graphic designer and absolutely not a legal consultant. I clearly stated that her massive financial debt was entirely her own personal problem to solve. I wrote the name of my sharp divorce lawyer on a small piece of white paper and slid it across the heavy wooden desk. I calmly instructed her to take the paper and leave my private office immediately. She looked at me with deep shock in her red eyes. She desperately expected a warm sisterhood of mutual victims, but I absolutely refused to carry her heavy burdens. She slowly stood up and walked out the heavy glass door in total absolute silence. I drank my warm green tea and went straight back to my highly successful digital work. The universal law of karma was absolutely real and highly efficient. The past was permanently closed, and my bright, independent future was the only thing that truly mattered. The quiet Friday afternoon eventually turned into a peaceful evening. I packed my leather briefcase and locked the heavy glass door of my private office. The strange encounter with the foolish young woman did not ruin my positive mood at all. I walked down the bright city street and drove my reliable car back to my beautiful, small house. My energetic golden retriever greeted me with massive joy at the front door. I spent the entire weekend planting bright yellow flowers in my green garden and reading thick books on my comfortable sofa. The dark ghosts of my terrible past were completely locked outside my safe rural sanctuary. The following 3 weeks passed with incredible success for my growing digital marketing agency. We secured 2 massive corporate contracts, and I hired 3 brand new graphic designers to handle the heavy workload. My professional life was completely thriving, and my private bank accounts were growing much larger every single day. Absolute pure peace was my brand new daily reality, and absolutely nobody could take that away from me. The ultimate final confrontation happened on a very rainy Tuesday morning. I was standing in the main lobby of my office building, holding a warm cup of black coffee. I was patiently waiting for a highly important corporate client to arrive for a major business meeting. The heavy glass doors of the lobby suddenly slid open and a completely soaking, wet figure stumbled inside the clean building. I immediately recognized the pathetic physical posture of the lying man. He looked absolutely terrible and entirely desperate. His cheap clothing was completely drenched in cold winter rain, and his worn shoes left dirty wet marks on the pristine marble floor. He had obviously tracked down my successful business address after his ruined young fiancée told him about my massive corporate success. The foolish man genuinely believed he could simply walk back into my peaceful life and demand a massive piece of my hard-earned wealth. He thought the quiet, loyal woman he used to manipulate was still hiding deep inside my soul. The lying man walked directly toward me, with a highly aggressive look in his dark, hollow eyes. He loudly demanded that I give him exactly $50,000 to help him start a brand new software company. He actually claimed that he legally deserved half of my entire digital business because we were previously married for 7 long years. The sheer absolute audacity of his ridiculous demand made me want to laugh right in his pathetic face. The busy corporate lobby was completely filled with wealthy executives and smart business professionals. People completely stopped walking and stared silently at the crazy wet man yelling at a successful female executive. I absolutely refused to let his toxic chaos ruin my highly professional public image. I did not raise my steady voice, and I did not show a single ounce of hidden fear. I simply took a slow sip of my warm black coffee and looked directly into his desperate eyes. I felt entirely, completely powerful. I calmly told the lying man that our legal divorce was completely finalized exactly 3 years ago by a strict family court judge. I clearly reminded him that he was officially ordered to pay my massive legal fees, and he actually still owed me exactly $12,000. The lying man suddenly realized his loud public intimidation tactic was completely failing to break my strong boundary. He took a highly threatening step toward me and aggressively raised his dirty right hand. But he completely forgot that I was absolutely no longer the tired cleaning woman he used to easily control. The massive security guard standing near the main reception desk immediately rushed forward. The tall, strong guard forcefully grabbed the lying man by his wet collar and physically dragged him toward the heavy glass doors. The lying man kicked and screamed pathetic threats as he was literally thrown back out into the freezing cold rain. He hit the wet concrete sidewalk and completely disappeared from my bright world forever. My highly important corporate client walked into the bright lobby exactly 2 minutes later. The wealthy older client did not see the pathetic confrontation at all. I smiled my most confident professional smile and warmly shook his dry right hand. We walked together into the private steel elevator and rode up to my beautiful glass office on the top floor. The desperate lying man was completely gone forever, and my brand new powerful life continued without a single interruption. The heavy golden cage he tried to lock me inside was entirely destroyed, and I was finally flying completely free in the endless blue sky. The private business meeting in my glass office was an absolute massive success. The wealthy older client was highly impressed with my detailed digital marketing proposal. He carefully reviewed the thick presentation folder and slowly nodded his gray head. He signed the heavy corporate contract using a thick gold pen and officially made my agency his primary marketing partner. I shook his warm hand and thanked him for his immense trust in my growing business. The massive contract was worth exactly $2 million, and it completely secured the financial future of my entire dedicated team. I watched the older client walk out the heavy glass door, and I took a very deep breath of pure, absolute victory. The desperate wet man from the lobby was entirely forgotten, like a terrible bad dream. My mind was completely focused on building an unbreakable empire of total success. My small digital marketing agency officially doubled its physical size over the next 6 months. I rented the entire top floor of the modern office building, and hired exactly 10 more brilliant graphic designers. We completely transformed the massive empty space into a bright, beautiful, creative sanctuary. But massive financial success was absolutely not enough to satisfy my healing soul. I deeply remembered the cold fear I felt when I discovered the empty bank accounts exactly 3 years ago. I remembered the heavy physical exhaustion of working two terrible jobs while a lying monster slowly drained my hard-earned money. I wanted to use my brand new corporate power to actively protect other innocent women from terrible financial abuse. I scheduled a private meeting with my sharp divorce lawyer and pitched a brand new philanthropic idea. I wanted to start a special legal foundation entirely dedicated to helping poor women escape toxic marriages and hidden financial fraud. The brilliant lawyer smiled a massive, bright smile and immediately agreed to join the powerful board of directors. She stated that the legal system desperately needed a strong private organization to fund the expensive court battles for innocent victims. We officially launched the Brave Foundation on a beautiful sunny morning in early autumn. We rented a secure private office on the ground floor of my corporate building and hired 2 dedicated social workers. The very first woman who walked through our heavy oak doors was completely terrified and physically shaking. She wore cheap, faded clothing and held a thin plastic folder filled with confusing bank statements. She told us her wealthy husband secretly opened massive credit cards using her stolen identity and completely ruined her entire financial life. He was actively planning to abandon her and take their 2 young children to a completely different foreign country. I sat across the wooden table from her and looked directly into her tired brown eyes. I did not see a weak, broken victim sitting in the soft chair. I saw the exact same quiet, massive strength I possessed when I was scrubbing dirty residential floors. I softly told the terrified woman that she was absolutely not alone in her dark battle. I promised her we would completely dismantle his fake corporate empire and retrieve every single stolen dollar before he ever reached the international airport. The sharp lawyer immediately started drafting the aggressive legal documents, while I held the cold hand of the brave woman. We were actively building an incredible army of strong, independent women who absolutely refused to remain quiet victims. The foolish men who completely underestimated our endless patience would soon face the massive, cold consequences of their terrible lies. I drove my reliable car back to my peaceful house that evening, feeling a profound sense of true absolute purpose. My highly energetic golden retriever ran across the bright green grass to greet me with massive joy. I cooked a delicious warm dinner and ate alone in my quiet wooden kitchen. I stood in my beautiful, peaceful garden and realized my dark, traumatic past was actually the greatest gift I ever received. The heavy golden cage was completely destroyed, and the strong iron bars were entirely melted down to forge sharp legal swords. We were officially ready to fight the hidden monsters and win every single future war. Exactly 5 years passed since we opened the heavy oak doors of our legal foundation. My digital marketing agency grew into a massive national corporation, employing over 200 brilliant creative minds. But my true, absolute pride was the incredible success of our private charity organization. We successfully helped over 3,000 innocent women completely escape terrible toxic marriages and hidden financial abuse. The massive charity organization completely changed the entire legal landscape of our city. We built safe emergency housing for women escaping dangerous situations in the middle of the night. We offered free educational classes to help these brave women build highly successful, independent careers. The first terrified woman who walked into our office 5 years ago was now our senior program director. She completely destroyed the fake corporate empire of her wealthy husband and secured full legal custody of her 2 young children. She bought a beautiful small house in the quiet suburbs and lived entirely on her own independent terms. Watching her transform from a shaking victim into a powerful corporate leader was the greatest reward of my entire life. The sharp lawyer and I decided to host a massive charity gala to celebrate our 5-year anniversary. We rented the grand ballroom of the most expensive luxury hotel in the massive city. The entire room was beautifully decorated with bright white flowers and sparkling crystal chandeliers. Hundreds of powerful corporate executives and wealthy local politicians attended the expensive event. They happily wrote massive donation checks to completely fund our legal battles for the next 10 years. I stood on the grand wooden stage wearing a simple, elegant dark dress. I looked out at the massive crowd of highly successful women and felt a deep, profound sense of true victory. I saw the bright, smiling faces of the exact same women we rescued from total financial ruin. They were now wearing elegant clothing and running their very own successful businesses. I did not need to yell or make loud, aggressive demands. I simply spoke my quiet truth, and the entire wealthy room listened with absolute, pure respect. I told the massive crowd about the dark, cold hospital room where my entire life completely shattered exactly 8 years ago. I described the heavy physical exhaustion of scrubbing dirty residential floors just to fund the luxurious fake life of a lying monster. I explained how the terrible financial betrayal completely broke my trusting heart, but ultimately forged my unbreakable iron spirit. I told them that the foolish men who count on our quiet patience rarely check whether that silence actually means we are weak. The entire grand ballroom erupted into massive, loud applause when I finally finished my short speech. The sharp lawyer walked onto the wooden stage and handed me a beautiful glass award recognizing my massive dedication to women in need. Later that exact same evening, I was sitting at my private table when a wealthy local banker approached me. He casually mentioned that he recently saw the lying man who stole 7 years of my youth. The wealthy banker told me the lying man was currently working as a low-level janitor at a cheap motel on the dark outskirts of the city. He lived in a tiny, dirty room and spent his meager wages trying to pay off massive legal debts. The beautiful young fiancée completely ruined his credit score, and the legal system permanently crushed his fake entrepreneurial dreams. I listened to the wealthy banker and felt absolutely nothing in my peaceful heart. I did not feel any dark joy or lingering sadness. The lying man was simply a cold ghost from a totally different lifetime. The universal law of karma handled his ultimate punishment with absolute perfect precision. I left the grand charity gala slightly before midnight and drove my reliable car back to my peaceful rural house. My highly energetic golden retriever was sleeping softly on the warm living room rug. I took off my expensive dress and changed into comfortable cotton pajamas. I brewed a fresh pot of warm green tea and walked out into my beautiful dark garden. The bright silver moon was shining perfectly down on my quiet wooden house. The heavy golden cage was nothing but a distant memory buried completely in the deep past. I built a massive empire of pure, absolute freedom using nothing but my own honest hard work and quiet determination. Thank you so much for listening to Drama Storytime. We hope this long, incredible journey reminds you to always trust your own inner strength. Never let anyone drain your bright energy or steal your hard-earned financial freedom. The foolish folks who severely underestimate you will eventually face the cold, hard truth of your massive power. Please remember to drop a quick comment and always subscribe to our channel for more stories of ordinary women doing ghastly, high extraordinary things. I will see you in the very next story. Stay incredibly strong and always protect your absolute peace.